Yeah. Back up in here, smoked out. Strictly trees. Ain't trying to mix nothing with my leaves. Swift on the board, breaking day with us. It's for my dogs in the cut, doing what you gotta do to feed your seeds. Maintain, stand strong. Daybreak sneaks upon my camp once more. Get up, get dressed and prepare for war.
Yo, the war's with everything outside your door.
It's a rude awakening, but it's more in store.
When I walk through Brooklyn, people show me love. Went over to GA, people show me love. Went to North Carolina, they showed us love. Even went to California and got love from thugs. And it's all good, big up to all the neighborhoods that came to see Tech and Steel whenever they could. But remember, the struggle continues after the venue. Watch who you fuck with, watch what you get into. There's a war going on outside and in my mental. Getting drunk and I wondering what that's getting been through. Last week my man put a pistol to his temple. I said, nah son, not that, that's too simple. One little nigga on the block selling crystal. Next little nigga got shot up on Bristol. Another little nigga locked cause they blew the whistle. Last nigga do the same bitch shit his little sister. This little nigga be hard to find. Mind on making it in this day and time. Do what we have to, criminal or legal. Staying alive, striving with my people.
In days of our lives, we tried to make ends meet. The search for tomorrow got us walking the streets.
I'm not sweating sleep, not really stressing beef. I'm just trying to live,
trying to eat,
trying to stand strong, trying not to fall.
Trying to live to see my unborn get tall.
Cause the streets of New York ain't just a walk in the park. You can get your life got in the day or the dark.
I give thanks when I rise up, open my eyes up. Calisthenic get me right so I be nice up. Cause when you feel fit you feel nice. Beware of the tricks in the fool paradise. Like the wicked-minded youth with them gun punk cock, who wish to ambush me when I lead the weak spot. Wanna get what I got, roll the lie that I caught. Rock the shines that I rock, make my life clock stop. But death me fear not, cause the most high guys I bless me with protection as the years pass by. Conqueror, mighty Rasa, let no man steal from the pot, prepare for ya. As I meditate and demonstrate verbal earthquakes, break it down like a junkie with a case of shakes. To my dogs flipping weight and behind gates, living street life, quick to stash on jakes. For your need, do whatever the deed. Watch shiesty ass bitches and the next man greed. Mr. Ripper from the sky to the hills, it's all real. Gotta maintain cause the sun don't chill.
In days of our life, we strive to make ends meet. The search for tomorrow got us walking the streets.
Not sweating sleep, not stressing beef. I'm just trying to live, trying to eat. Trying to stand strong, trying not to fall.
I'm just trying to live to see my unborn get tall.
Cause the streets of New York ain't no walk in the park.
You can get your life got in the day or the dark.
This is George Rogers welcoming you to Part 5 of WMAR-TV's 5-part series, Bars to Progress. In segments 1 through 4, we examined our correctional system as it is. In this concluding part, we shall explore the future of prisons in order to find out if they can be changed so as to improve both society and the inmate. In the past, prison reform has never been a strong political issue, except in the wake of incidents such as those at Attica and San Quentin. Soon after these incidents, public furor has usually died down and prison conditions remained unchanged. Yet it's doubtful that we can afford the luxury of going back to the good old days of the chain gang, striped uniform, and lockstep marching, when the offender was safely out of sight and consequently out of mind. In the early days of this century, such an approach did not correct the offender, and now we may be reaping the harvest of that neglect. Today, the average large penal institution is more of an emotional time bomb than its harsher counterpart of yesteryear. Yet, for a variety of reasons, it will never be possible to keep the lid on today's prisons with methods that worked in the past. One reason is that the prison population's character has changed since World War II. Now the joint is run not by the older inmate who waited patiently for a chance to act, but by a much younger man, one who is less patient, more violent, articulate if not educated, and aware of what is going on outside the walls of the institution. An almost logical result of this combination of hostility, awareness, and youth is the prison riot, which is occurring with ever-increasing frequency. The most recent large-scale uprising in Maryland took place at the House of Correction in 1964. A relatively quiet period followed, but events at Attica, San Quentin, Soledad Prison in California, Essex County Jail in Newark, Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia, New York's Tombs, Cummins Prison Farm in Arkansas, and Baltimore's own jail seem to herald the approach of a national crisis in penology. The usual precautions against inmate uprisings are isolation of suspected ringleaders and increased security, but frequently this strategy can be self-defeating if it is overdone. Increased public awareness is another reason mitigating against the return of the good old days of repressive penology. Inmates cannot vote, of course, and until recently, there was little they could do to improve prison conditions by legal means. In September 1971, however, the first meeting of a unique group took place at Baltimore's St. Peter Claver's Church. Known as the Concerned Citizens for Family Solidarity, the group's purpose is to organize friends and relatives of inmates into voting blocks so that pressure for prison reform can be applied from the community level. At that first meeting, several lifers from the Maryland House of Correction were permitted to address the group.
All right, first of all, here's the way the situation is. If you think that Attica was just a spur of the moment thing, you're wrong. Because all of the prisons in the state of Maryland have the same potential. All it needs is a spark, and it doesn't take much. 40-some people died in Attica. The bulk of them were cons. But that doesn't matter that they were cons, they were human beings. 10 hostages died, unnecessarily. First of all, whatever happens in the institution affects you whether you want it to or not. The type of treatment that the guy gets behind those walls reflects upon you. When he comes out, you don't know what he's going to be. He might be a damn animal. And you know how animals react, especially those that come out of the jungle. Prisons are jungles. Instead of correcting people, they dehumanize people. They corrupt people. And most of the people, I don't believe, really give a damn about whether they corrupt them or not. First of all, for the last, I'll say 15 years, because it'll be 15 years in October the 9th. All right. In the last 15 years, nothing's really changed. Faces have changed. Administrative figures have changed. But the overall system is still the same. It hasn't changed one iota. Often I read in the paper about crime in the streets. The people want to do something. You're unable to do this because you do not understand. Crime and correction relate. They go together. Unless you, as free individuals, come together as one body, coming within every institution in America to put the proper rehabilitation programs in, crime will continue. Your sons, your daughters will use drugs. This is one of the problems. A man will only react according to how he is treated. You take a man, you put him within an institution where he has lived in a disciplining situation. There's no love. There's no warmth. A man cannot be a man without love. This is where you are guilty. You are guilty because you have violated one of the most sacred commandments that we have, to love thy fellow man. We all have done something wrong. We are guilty. We admit that we have done wrong. But we are man enough to face this and to change. Can you do this? Is there no love? It is a damn shame that we, as intelligent individuals, having the understanding to see that without unity, black and white, we will allow society to destroy us. Only in unity, in strength, and togetherness, people as human beings, can we overcome what is in this world, a sick society. So what are we to do? You have the power that you aren't even aware of it, the power to vote. There's over 200,000 inmates within the American Correctional Institution. Think about that. How many founders that is. That's a lot of votes. You see, there's a time for talk, there's a time for action. Now is a time for action.
Okay, I'll say good morning. We would like to have invocation.
Another visible example of growing public concern was the third annual crime seminar held in October 1971 at the Maryland Penitentiary. The purpose of the seminar was to bring together members of society and the prison population. Years ago, the idea of holding such frank and open discussions would have been unthinkable. Today, contact between inmate and society is becoming more and more commonplace. Yet the average person who is not a legislator, parole agent, member of a law enforcement agency, or citizens' welfare group rarely attends events such as the crime seminar. And this type of person, paradoxically, is the one who is most important if genuine prison reform is to be brought about.
Feel good to see so many faces that were here yesterday. It makes me feel good to know that it's some people that care about us here in the prison. It means a lot, believe that. Not only to me as an individual, but to every inmate here in this prison and any prison. Because we can't make it without you.
But the seminar was not all talk. Afterwards, several members of the audience were taken on tours of the institutions by inmates. That this occurred illustrated not only the desire of inmates and certain segments of the public to improve communications and conditions, but also a similar desire on the part of the prison administration. Obviously, neither seminar nor the tours could have taken place without the agreement of top officials. There are other examples of administrative willingness to bend from the old policy of detention and iron discipline. In 1958, Maryland began its camp system, which now includes 7 facilities scattered throughout the state and 950 inmates. At the camp site, which a man may reach 90 days before he's released, the atmosphere is entirely different from that of the major institution. Security is held to a minimum in order to develop the inmate's sense of responsibility. The relaxed atmosphere occasionally draws critical fire, but Director T. Howard Metzger believes the camp system is effective and beneficial.
I think that when we get a man, after he leaves the institution into the camp environment, his thinking begins to change. When he's in an institution, his thoughts are that he's there and he can't do much about it. But the minute he's assigned to a camp, he begins to see outside. And he begins to get a feeling of going outside, to going home, and his attitudes change, his outlook changes. And in order for us to shorten the gap between institution and outside, we have done certain things in the camp system to help him to adjust and to live in such a way that he will outside. Some of these things, for instance, that we have done are to, for instance, in a dining room, we've taken away entirely the attitude and the impression of an institutional dining room. We put in small tables for 4 with color, a lot of color to the tables, color to the chairs. We've taken out the traditional institutional trays and put in chinaware. We've put on the table salt and pepper, sugar, condiments, ketchup, mustard, etc. And we've given a man a napkin, a knife, a fork, and a spoon. And we feel in doing this that we're not going overboard. We're merely trying to get this man to begin to function as he will in 3 or 4 months when he's released. And 3 or 4 months is the average stay of a man within the correctional camp system. Now, we also thought that if we're going to have this man function normally, as he will outside, that we have to do other things to help him to attain this feeling of living with people and back in society. We used to have a commissary book of stamps, and a man would be issued, according to his funds, a book of stamps, and he used these stamps in the commissary to make purchases of cigarettes, toothpaste, and his other needs. Through the cooperation of the Commissioner's Office, we have eliminated these books, and now we permit an inmate to have cash, up to $15. Anything over $15, again, is contraband. Now, we feel that if this man is going to, again, in 2 or 3 months outside, handle his funds and have to live outside and have to take care of his money and protect his rights and funds, why not let him practice this his last few months in prison or in a prison environment? So that we have him using this money and using cash and carrying cash. Now, in order that he might use the cash, it seems sensible that we put in means for him to spend this money within the institution. So we put in vending machines, coffee machines, sandwich machines, soft drinks, and then we did something that many people raised their eyebrows. We put in paid telephones. I can't understand why, if a man is again going home in a month or 2, what is wrong with him if he has a problem home, if he has sickness home, he has concern of some kind home about his family, or if he just wants to talk to his girlfriend, to use a telephone. The telephones have become very popular with the men. We have certain restrictions that they don't bother officials. We don't want a man to pick up the phone and call the governor or the commissioner. But we do want him to be able to call home, to check on his wife or family, and to see if someone is ill, or to find out what the status of the illness is, or just to have a conversation to lift his spirits. I see nothing wrong with this. We were criticized in some of our camps because we put in golf courses. Now, this sounds terrible, and people said to us, what are you running, country clubs or prisons? We're running a pre-release situation where we're getting a man ready to go back to live side by side with you in a community. And we're trying to get him to accept and do the things that you expect him and want him to do when he is back in a community. The golf course, they constructed themselves. The clubs were their own. They built everything themselves. There was no cost to the state. And if a man is playing golf, certainly custody isn't a big problem. Although we were criticized, and criticized severely by some legislaturemen, for having golf courses at our camps. Down at our Poplar Hill camp, which is on the river, we have some boats, and we permit the men to fish. Is this coddling a prisoner, so to speak? Or is this helping a man to be a man and helping a man to get ready to go home? And maybe, for God's sake, letting a man do something that he never was able to do before in his life. Maybe it's the first time that he ever realized that there are good things in life that he can do. I think the whole camp system is dedicated to help a man to be a good, fruitful citizen out in the community.
Still other changes are in the wind to assist the offender after he's released from the institution or camp. At present, there are more than 2,500 different agencies in the state of Maryland. If he were knowledgeable, extremely patient, and financially able, it is possible that the ex-offender would be able to extract more assistance from this bewildering mass of agencies than he now gets. But the fact is that many agencies simply are not aware that the other agencies even exist. And as a result, the ex-offender often must choose between endless red tape and crime. In order to break through this wall of confusion, duplication, and lack of information, a major coordinating effort is now taking place in the Department of Employment Security building. The official title of this coordinating effort is the State of Maryland Offender Model Manpower Delivery Systems Project, or more simply, Offender Model. If the project receives federal funding and is reasonably successful, the offender will be dealt with as a complete individual rather than as someone who was periodically arrested and sent back to the institution. One of the offender model administrators is McFadden Tillman.
What we're really doing is setting up course centers within individual areas, whereas there will be a person that will work with the offender. He can come to that place, and services will be given, information will be given, and the whole bit right there at one location, sort of a feed basket type implementation of a service. And the man will be able to come in and take advantage of any of the services, and all of the services will be centralized to the point that he can find out where and not run all over the place with a varied individuals. He'll be able to do it one person, one place, in one location, hopefully in his own community.
The past decades have seen many suggestions concerning prison reform. Some have been implemented, most have not. But even those which have been put into operation have met with only partial success. One example is California, which permits a great number of family visits, 3-day passes for inmates, and indeterminate sentences. Yet author Jessica Mitford maintains that the California system is just as bad as any other, and that indeterminate sentencing keeps the prisoner in perpetual suspense. In the Washington State Prison at Walla Walla, prisoners have a voice but no vote in meting out punishment. Yet inmate participation in prison management was tried as far back as the late 19th century, and it's nearly always failed. A frequent reason for that failure was that the inmates often exploited their management positions by abusing other prisoners. Here in Maryland, a state that is certainly more enlightened than most others, weekend furloughs have been tried with some success, as has the camp system. But the most forward-looking approach to penology may be contained in this report on a concept of rehabilitation which is known as community corrections. Now, briefly, that concept is this. Traditionally, the community is the core of man's existence. It is the geographical area in which the necessities of living are found. The location of the home, educational facilities, church, industry, law enforcement agencies, medical facilities, job, and various social and recreational services. Although neither the neighborhood nor family is as tightly knit as they once were, the community is still the working arena in which problems are not only created, but occasionally solved. In the past, however, when a person has committed a criminal or antisocial act, we have banished him from the community, usually to a massive prison far removed from the services he needs to rehabilitate himself. The community corrections concept, while not advocating the total elimination of maximum security prisons, seeks to add a new dimension to correction. These would be small rehabilitation centers of about 100 persons each. Instead of being separated from the community, however, each small unit would be located as closely as possible to the area from which it draws its offenders, or clients. Thus, the centers would be able to correct offenders, except those deemed a threat to the public, in their own community. All of the social, counseling, and recreational services, academic and vocational training, would be carried on using existing community facilities, instead of trying to recreate these same services within the walls of an isolated institution. The chairman of the Community Corrections Committee, the Honorable George B. Raisin, Jr., believes it is a concept that will protect society and genuinely rehabilitate the offender.
I think it's important to get over to the public and to society that this proposed change in the method of dealing with the offender is not to coddle the offender. We're not bleeding hearts, but it's to better protect society by returning to society the offender, hopefully he has changed his behavior, modified his behavior, learned some skills so that he will not be a danger to society. So I would certainly want the general public to realize that the whole philosophy back of this community corrections is to protect society in a better manner, as well as to make it less expensive to deal with the offenders. As it is now, we're dealing with offenders in maximum security institutions, which cost approximately $4,000 a year to maintain that offender. Whereas in these community facilities, it would be much, much less expensive, as well as the offender could be working, he could be contributing to his family, so that the family will not have to go to social services for support, as well as integrating him back into society so that when he's finally released from the Division of Corrections Supervision, he will be settled in a job, hopefully will have changed his attitude about the law, and will be a contributing member of society rather than an offending member of society.
Of course, all the innovative programs in the world will yield nothing if society is not convinced that prison reform is necessary. At first glance, it would seem obvious that society would favor some kind of reform. But in his thoughtful book, The Crime of Punishment, psychiatrist Carl Menninger contends that society secretly wants crime, needs crime, and gains definite satisfaction from the mishandling of it. It is his belief that the public has a fascination for violence and clings tenaciously to its yen for vengeance, blind and deaf to the expense, futility, and dangerousness of the resulting penal system. Are these words merely a flight of fancy or truth? Unfortunately, when one examines prison reform over the past few years, it becomes obvious that Menninger's words contain more than a modicum of truth. In 1965, for example, WMAR-TV produced the first documentary series on Maryland's prison system, called Pressures and Progress. And it's become apparent in the past 6 years that the pressures have increased far more than the progress. As a point of reference, Father Francis Meyer Tobey, then Maryland Penitentiary Chaplain, uttered these words about the future of prisons in 1965.
That the future of prisons will be the abolishment of prisons as we know them today. We have had prisons for a long time, but I don't think they're accomplishing the purpose for which they are set up. The recidivism is increasing, as you know, at an alarming rate. These men are here because something has happened in their families. They needed closer family ties. Many of them needed more love in their families. And so we place them now in a society without any families at all, where there isn't love as we know it. These men were unable to adjust in society, so we remove them from society completely and then expect them to be able to adjust later on in a society for which they are unprepared to go. They have lacked a sense of responsibility in many cases, and in prison one does not learn very well to develop a sense of responsibility. He has been very insecure in his past life, and this insecurity is enhanced when he comes into this environment because of the element of subjection and the feelings of increased guilt. All these develop his feeling of insecurity, and so when he leaves a prison, many times, most of the times, he doesn't want to come back, but he's incapable of making it because we haven't prepared him properly to adjust to society. Therefore, I think prisons as we know them, with its walls and its bars and its cells and the tremendous regimentation and subjection, all of this must eventually be abolished.
Father Tobey's soft-spoken predictions of 1965 have not become reality. What has become reality is a change of tone in the voices of those calling for prison reform. And one need go no farther than Father Tobey himself to hear this growing impatience.
The emphasis on rehabilitation must now become more than just a word. Men in prison are now not just human beings, they are human beings who are our brothers, black and white. And in all of our prisons, there seems to be a great preponderance of black. Men in prison, therefore, are our responsibility, the responsibility of every man in our society. What happens here in the Maryland Penitentiary, what occurs in Jessup and the women's prison and in Hagerstown, what's happening in the Baltimore City Jail is the responsibility, and it will lay on the conscience of every human being here in the state of Maryland. It is the responsibility of every man in Maryland and throughout the country. And so, dear God, we beg your blessing on all our brothers here, those who are confined and those of us who are fortunate to be on the outside of these walls. We beg your blessing so that through enlightened communication, we may bring about new, radical change that will bring new hope to the men who are here and hasten the day of their return to us, better men in free society.
This is a Channel 2 editorial. Since the beginning of the human community, there have been persons who offended society and have had to be put away for the common good. Since earliest time, the pervasive principle of penology has been to put an iron door on a cavern, put the offender inside, and clang shut the door. From that point on, forget him. Even today, too many of us would combat crime simply by locking up the offenders, getting them out of our sight, and hopefully out of mind. It has become increasingly evident, as we have made plain in Bars to Progress, that this is no solution to either our crime problem or our penal problem. Except for the most unspeakable offenses, the offender cannot be kept forever. The day comes when he must be set free, and according to our theory of justice, he is paid for his crime. What then happens to the ex-offender depends on how effective our corrective system has been during the time he has been in custody. If he has been in a jail that is nothing more than a warehouse for warm bodies, a mausoleum for the living dead, on the outside, he becomes a lurking, brooding hazard for everyone. For during his time behind bars, he has known bitterness, resentment, and frustration. He has honed his criminal skills on constant association with others, perhaps more experienced than he. If, on top of this bitterness, he cannot find employment to provide for even simple needs, he may be, and frequently is, forced by hunger or other necessity to seek profit from his only skill, his particular brand of crime. Even today, too many of us still say, punish, punish, punish. Think of his victim. Get revenge, revenge, revenge. But revengeful warehousing spawns so many Atticas that it's obviously not the answer. It's time to try the opposite approach. Even today, too few of us say, teach, train, prepare this offender for respectable, prideful, profitable post-prison activity. Give him a useful, marketable skill. Otherwise, he emerges as a potential problem for neighbor, for policeman, for the law courts, and then once again for the prison system. Realism compels us to concede that all criminals cannot be or may not want to be rehabilitated. All, however, must be given this opportunity. This is no plea to coddle the criminal or pamper the prisoner. This is a hard-nosed, practical approach to the problems of the growing danger and the growing expense of the big house penal concept we have today. Throughout the effort which resulted in this examination we have called Bars to Progress, we've had the growing conviction that sincere and earnest consideration is needed, along with legislation and appropriate funding, for a gradual phasing out of our huge, archaic human warehouses to be replaced by modern, smaller institutions widely dispersed in many communities. With community correctionals, the offender would serve his sentence in his own neighborhood, close to family, close to friends, close to help and diagnosis and counsel from those who care about him. The community correctional concept could assure more attention to rehabilitation efforts instead of mere custodial service, and offenders could be more effectively eased back into the community when they earn their freedom. Already the groundwork for this concept has been laid by a committee to the Governor's Commission on Law Enforcement and Justice. We recommend for your attention proposals for the community concept now being prepared for official consideration. It seems logical to us at this time that much more emphasis should be quickly put on more counseling and job training for inmates. It seems logical that the state and its subdivisions should take a greater responsibility in the hiring of ex-offenders so they are not forced to renewed crime. In the interest of self-preservation, industry and commerce could realistically be expected to follow this example. It seems logical that gradually the guard function should, to a considerable extent, transfer into a teacher function, so the vast manpower potential of the overcrowded jailhouse may be channeled into constructive directions. But the main key to progress, it seems to us, lies in keeping the offender in his own community, rather than compressing him into the subculture of crime, bestiality, and frustration that exists in the big house. The big house concept has not worked in the past, it is not working now, and it cannot be expected to work in the future. Genuine prison reform thus becomes mandatory. Failing in this, we can only expect that more Atticas and terror in the streets will become, God forbid, a way of life. This has been a Channel 2 editorial.